Let's start with the earnings release. Underlying sales missed analyst estimates. What weighed on the sales this quarter?
Yeah, we think they are very good results, actually. If you look over 6 months, because we don't really run the business on a 90-day basis, it's a 2.7% growth. Most of that is actually volume. You see now the fourth quarter of sequential volume growth. Lots of people had concerns in this market if you can actually grow volume. It's well ahead of the market, and that actually also drives our operating profit. You've seen a very strong improvement in underlying operating profit, about 80 basis points, basically driven by expansion of gross margin by 60 basis points. And so we're very pleased about that. Earnings per share, as a result, on a constant basis, up 18%. And that's
so you're not worried about the sales?
Result. Well, what we say to the market is first half is a little slower, second half a little faster. This quarter, a little bit on the lower side because we have to deal with an enormous trucker strike in Brazil. But we run the business for a little bit longer than a few weeks.
How are you going to ramp up for the second half of the year?
So second half of the year, we do think that there is a little bit more pricing coming in because pricing is relatively at the low side, and that will obviously help. And then we have phasing of innovations and initiatives that come through in the second half. So we think that the guidance that we've given to the market to be between the 3 and 5% range, we will hold that guidance.
I want to ask you about what's happening politically with this the trade escalations. How worried are you about this potential of like a full-out trade war?
Well, it's not a good thing, and nobody is served by this. We know that enormous wealth has been created over the last decades by globalizing our world. Unfortunately, within that globalization, we probably haven't always taken care enough about people that suffer in that transition. You really need to work on what many people now call a just transition so that people can see the benefit of this globalization being broader spread across the population. But what you now see in this tick-for-tack war, nobody is served by that. I've just taken on the chairmanship of the International Chambers of Commerce, and we're very concerned about that and continuing to work with the countries. At the same time, we're seeing good signs from increased bilateral agreements between other countries. We have a trade pact now in the Far East. We see Africa expanding their regional trade pacts. We see the same happening in Latin America. So we just need to focus on that when we deal with some of the challenges in certain parts of the world.
How are you planning for any sort of trade escalations?
Well, for us, it's our business is slightly different because we're a consumer goods business. We sell, consumers use us 2.5 billion times a day across the world. In many of these bigger countries, we are producing in the countries itself. So we are not, a company that sells in one country, produces in another country. Broadly, we are covered for these things. But yeah, raw materials have to go across the world. Oil prices fluctuate as a result of that. Some products that you have to import across boundaries, you have to deal with then these restrictions that come in. Not different from the cost of doing business when you have other uncertainties to deal with, like climate change or elections like you've seen in some of the countries. The good thing is that Unilever is in 190 countries. We have a broad portfolio. And as you can see with these results, which are now 10 years of top and bottom line growth, we manage the positives and the negatives.
So you'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis?
We have to, and we just need to move forward. We've stepped up our innovation program as a result of that. You see our gross margin expansion basically driven by innovation, not really price. So that's a very good thing. High quality also for the investors. And we continue to accelerate our innovation programs to deal with these uncertainties that are out there.
How satisfied are you right now how the Brexit talks are going? Or are you alarmed by the direction of these talks currently?
Well, I think there's, if I may be honest, obviously I've always been very clear that it's better for the UK to stay in Europe. But the results of the referendum, I think, by now are well known to everybody. We have seen quite an evolution since then. I think the latest proposal of the Prime Minister goes definitely in the right direction. And we would be very supportive of many of the elements in that. And right now, all of our attention needs to go to make an agreement happen, because it's in the interest not only of the UK and the future of the UK, but also of the interest of Europe itself.
Yeah, the European Union is telling governments and companies to prepare for a chaotic scenario if Britain leaves without a deal in place. Do you have a plan in place if that was to happen?
No, we certainly do. As a business, you always work on plan A and plan B, and you would be stupid not to. So here we have a little bit of time. There are transition periods which we have asked for. All these things have come in subsequently when people said not possible. Common sense prevailed. and businesses need to be prepared for any scenario on both sides of the pond. And that is what a responsible company like ours would always do.
Major manufacturers like Airbus, I'm sure you heard the comments, have been vocal about how Brexit threatens their operations in the country. Do you agree with them?
Well, we continue to invest. We have two major research centers here. We think they're bigger than any political decision. We have people here from all over the world doing enormous things, driving our innovations. We've just made one of the major investments with the university in the north on advanced manufacturing that I hope to open with the Prime Minister. So we continue to invest in this country. We have 10 factories here and nearly 10,000 wonderful people working for us, and that doesn't change.
What worries you more, trade escalation or Brexit?
What worries me more is the increased geopolitical conflicts. We have a world that is increasingly interdependent. We have issues like climate change, global financial markets, cybersecurity, and yet we don't seem to have the global governance in place to deal with that. Many of the governance structures that were put in place at the time of Bretton Woods in 1944. The World Bank, the IMF, the OECD, and many of the other institutions. And frankly, they haven't adjusted to the realities of today's world, and that is really what you see we're increasingly paying the price for.
Are you concerned about the increasing number of investors based in the UK who are protesting the company's approach to communication before announcing that you're likely to drop out of the FTSE when you move to Rotterdam?
Well, I don't know if there's an increase. You can always find we have quite a lot of shareholders, hundreds of millions of shareholders, and they obviously have all different opinions. We have decided to go for unification because it's better for the future of the company, it's better for our shareholders. It makes this company more agile. We can participate in future activity in the industry, and it is tax effective for our shareholders in a simplified structure. Broadly, people understand that. We have decided to then have our organization located in the Netherlands. Now it's half Dutch, half UK. We had about 30 companies that were dually listed companies. There are only about 6 or 7 left, so everybody understands why we do this. We've also chosen to do that on a corporate governance structure that is significantly better than where we came from and takes the highest standards into account from both the UK and the Netherlands. One share, one vote would be a good principle of that. Now, unfortunately, an independent body called the FTSE, which has the UK index, has a certain percentage of people that do index buying, and if you go out of the index, then obviously these people cannot buy you and would be unsatisfied by that. But you can always buy our stock, which is traded in the UK. We've made very clear that we will be traded in Amsterdam and in the UK at the same time, so anybody can buy us here. And not much should change there, other than that they get a company that is even more competitive and can continue to produce the results we have produced that has given us the 300% shareholder return over the last 10 years.
But are you worried about investors that will sell shares if you drop out of the FTSE 100, especially the managed funds?
With any decision, we would have liked to stay in the FTSE, but that's not our decision. It's an independent body that decides that. They've decided.
When will that be decided?
That they only will decide that after you put your prospectus out and some of the decisions. So we don't think right now from the feedback we have with them that we are in the FTSE, but we are traded in the UK. So you always have to deal with some shareholders behind any decision that unfortunately only can buy the index and say then I cannot buy Unilever anymore, which they prefer as a company. It's actually a compliment to us. But behind any decision there will be some people that have to transition.
Finally, I wanted to ask you about succession. There's been speculation about how much longer you'll stay on as CEO. Obviously, this is a board decision. You've said you'd like to stay on to 2020. Is this still an accurate time frame? Well,
I've never mentioned a time frame, and it's not up to me. As you rightfully say, it's up to the board. And after 10 years in the job, even from the day I arrived, it is quite normal that we all work succession. We could be hit by a bus tomorrow. So we will continue to work. Let's hope not. But we will continue to work succession. We have a very strong bench internally, and obviously you benchmark against external candidates, and I'm sure that we will make the right decision at the right time here. Yeah, well, you've mentioned before you'd like it to be an internal candidate. Do you think that that's still the case? I think we want the best person to be in the job, and that is what we will be doing, looking at obviously a lot of criteria. The good thing is the company is in good shape. We have a great strategy. It's starting to work for us. We've done 40 acquisitions, so our portfolio change is starting to work for us. It's starting to drive top-line growth from 2019 forwards. We have divested from businesses like spreads that are less strategic. We've significantly made the company more agile, and that has given us the 10 years of top and bottom line growth. Knock on wood, we think we will do that this year again as well. Not many companies do. And in this market that you refer to of this enormous uncertainty, this enormous volatility, I think enough investors will appreciate this consistency and reliability that they can get from a company like Unilever.
Sorry, very quickly. Is there a product you're very excited that's coming out in the second half?
Well, there are many products that are very excited. We have the shower mousses across our line, which is a foam and the shower and body wash at the same time. A shaving foam and a shower and body wash is a wonderful line. We have products in our food lines, increasingly the natural and the organic products, which I'm very keen that we are doing that because the market trend is going into that direction. We have wonderful ice cream. If you haven't tried the Magnum Pints yet, I can certainly recommend
I've tried the Ben & Jerry's dairy
They
free.
are devilish. So fortunately, we're blessed with a lot of good products, and that is driving our gross margin and the strong volume growth that you now see well above the market.